Tonight, we begin our peaceful journey back in time. Back to a world of candlelight, soft footsteps on wooden floors, and long conversations in quiet rooms. A world where letters took days to arrive, and the biggest drama in the neighborhood was often who might marry whom. Welcome to the early 1800s. Welcome to the Regency era. It was a time when people traveled in carriages, wrapped themselves in shawls, and went to dances that lasted all night. A time when personal reputation mattered almost as much as fresh bread from the morning baker. People lived slower, quieter lives, and every small moment felt important. Even a single visit from a stranger could change the energy of an entire town. And in the middle of all this calm, polite chaos, one writer watched everything with sharp, careful eyes. Her name was Jane Austen. If you imagine her sitting by a window with a small notebook, looking out at the world around her, you would not be wrong. She wrote with simple grace, gentle humor, and a deep understanding of people. She wasn't loud. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't travel the world. But she observed every little detail of human behavior. The raised eyebrow, the awkward smile, the things people said, and the things they wanted to say but didn't. Her writing is warm and witty, and her stories feel like quiet conversations with a friend. That's exactly the feeling we want to bring you tonight. Soft, calm, relaxed, a peaceful journey into one of her most beloved works, Pride and Prejudice. But before the story begins, we need to set the scene. Let's take a slow walk to the countryside, to a small village called Longbourn. The sun is setting behind the hills, the birds are finding their last song of the day, and smoke curls gently from the chimneys. This is where the Bennet family lives, inside a cozy estate with creaking floors and rooms full of life. The Bennet home is always busy. Someone is always talking. Someone is always worrying. Someone is always laughing at someone else. Inside this house, 5 daughters grow up under the loving, sometimes dramatic, always entertaining care of their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Mr. Bennet is the quiet type. He likes his books, his peace, and the safety of his study. If you walk into his room without knocking, he might not say anything, but he will absolutely give you that. Why are we talking right now? Look, Mrs. Bennet, well, she is a different story. Her mind is always racing. Her voice is always full of excitement. And her heart is always focused on one very important goal, to see her daughters married. In the Regency era, marriage wasn't just romance. It wasn't candlelit dinners or long walks by the river. It was a practical need. A family's future, comfort, and survival could depend on it. A mother worrying about her daughter's futures wasn't dramatic. It was normal. Expected. Almost a daily sport. And so Mrs. Bennet worries. She worries so much that her worries should have their own bedroom. But her love for her daughters is at the heart of it all, and she dreams of seeing each of them happy and secure. Jane Austen opens this entire story with one of the most famous lines in English literature. A line that sounds serious, wise, even a little old-fashioned, but when you look closely, you can feel her teasing humor hidden under every word. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. This line is like Austen giving us a small wink. She knows the world she is describing is full of assumptions. She knows the society around her jumps to conclusions faster than a child jumps into a puddle. She knows people talk, judge, compare, and whisper at social gatherings. And so she starts with a joke disguised as a grand truth. Spoiler: not every wealthy man is wandering around England desperately looking for a wife. But in the minds of families like the Bennets, well, maybe he is. This opening sets the tone for everything that follows: gentle humor, playful storytelling, and social truths wrapped in soft laughter. Now, imagine the world these characters lived in. The evenings lit by candles flickering against wallpaper decorated with flowers. The streets quiet except for the clop of horse hooves. The local gathering spaces filled with music, chatter, and the rustle of silk dresses. Women wore gloves. Men bowed politely, and every conversation felt like a small dance, careful, graceful, and full of hidden meaning. This is the world we step into. A slow world, a calm world, a world made for bedtime storytelling. But before we drift deeper, let's look again at the Bennet estate. Longbourn is not grand or luxurious, but it is full of warmth. The daughters are lively and different from one another, each carrying her own hopes and flaws. Elizabeth, the second daughter, has sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Jane, the eldest, is as gentle as morning sunlight. Mary is serious and studious. Kitty follows where fun leads her, and Lydia, well, Lydia is a storm of laughter and noise. This family, with all their joys and worries, stands at the center of the story. They represent the everyday people of the time, not kings or queens, not warriors or adventurers, but families trying to live, love, and understand themselves in a changing world. Tonight, as you listen, imagine yourself drifting through this era. Picture the quiet country lanes, the sounds of distant music from a neighbor's house, the rustle of dresses in a hallway, the soft chatter near a fireplace. Let the calm of this world wrap around you. This chapter is our gentle introduction, a slow opening door, a warm welcome into the Regency era, a moment to settle your mind, breathe slowly, and prepare for the journey ahead. We now know the world. We know the time. We know the family at the center of it. So, when you're ready, the story will begin to unfold, one soft moment at a time. And with that, Chapter 1 comes to a peaceful close. The candles are low, the house is quiet, and the night invites us deeper into the tale. As a new morning rises over Longbourn, the Bennet home wakes up slowly, like a sleepy cat stretching in a sunny window. The birds begin their soft chatter, the servants move quietly through the hallways, and somewhere in the house, Mrs. Bennet is already talking about something important. Probably marriage. Actually, definitely marriage. The Bennet household is full of life, and sometimes that life is a little louder than Mr. Bennet would prefer. Mr. Bennet, for anyone meeting him for the first time, is a quiet man with a dry sense of humor. He loves peace, books, and being left alone to think. He is the type of father who listens carefully, then gives a reply that is so simple and calm that you're not sure if he's joking or being serious, and most of the time he's joking. Mrs. Bennet, on the other hand, is a soft storm of energy. She worries, she talks, she plans, she dreams. She loves her daughters more than anything, but she also stresses over them more than anything. If stress burned calories, she'd be the fittest woman in England. Her greatest mission in life is very clear: to see all 5 daughters married and settled, preferably with rich husbands who can give them comfort, safety, and maybe even a carriage with nice curtains. Every time someone new comes to town, she reacts like someone just announced free cake. Now let's meet the Bennet daughters, one by one, because each of them adds a different color to the warm, sometimes chaotic painting that is Longbourn. First, we have Jane Bennet, the eldest daughter. Jane is gentle, kind, and soft-spoken. She sees good in everyone, even when the rest of the world might not. She could meet a person who is clearly rude, and she would still say, "Oh, maybe they're just tired." Her heart is calm, and her smile is peaceful. If you were having a bad day, Jane would be the sister you'd go to. She would offer tea, a warm blanket, and a hopeful word that everything will be okay. People in society admire her beauty, but those who know her admire her sweet nature even more. Next is Elizabeth Bennet, the second daughter, and the main focus of the story. Elizabeth is clever, quick, and observant. She doesn't pretend to be someone she's not, and she has a habit of noticing everything around her, sometimes too well. She has a sense of humor that can brighten the room, and a straightforward honesty that might surprise you if you're not ready. But she is kind, fair, and thoughtful. Her intelligence is gentle, not harsh, and she often speaks with a small smile hidden behind her words. Elizabeth is close to Jane, and they balance each other like sun and shade. Then we come to Mary Bennet, the middle daughter. Mary is serious and always ready with a moral lesson or a quote from a book she read at breakfast. She practices the piano every day, even though the piano might wish she didn't. Mary means well, though. She tries hard to be wise and accomplished, because society told her girls should be. She often sits quietly with her books while her sisters laugh and chat. Some might call her boring, but she is simply marching to her own slow, thoughtful drum. After Mary is Kitty Bennet. Kitty is light, airy, and easily influenced by anyone more confident than she is. And unfortunately for her, the person she copies the most is her younger sister Lydia, which explains a lot. Kitty giggles, follows trends, and enjoys any excitement the world has to offer. She is like a leaf in the wind, soft, pretty, and going wherever the breeze takes her. And then we arrive at Lydia Bennet, the youngest, loudest, and most energetic of the sisters. Lydia doesn't walk, she bounces. She doesn't talk, she announces. She loves fun, fashion, soldiers, and anything that promises excitement. If there is gossip within 50 miles, Lydia will hear it first and shout it second. She is bold, cheerful, and sometimes a little careless, but she brings a strange kind of sparkle to the house, the kind that sometimes gives Mrs. Bennet a headache. Together, these 5 sisters bring warmth and a little chaos to everyday life in Longbourn. Their personalities are so different that living under the same roof feels like watching a play with 5 main characters and no script. But in their own ways, they care deeply for each other. They laugh together, they argue, they share secrets, and they help each other through all the small dramas of daily life. Every morning starts with little moments that show their bond. Jane quietly smoothing Lydia's hair before breakfast. Elizabeth teasing Kitty gently when she gets too excited. Mary reminding everyone of some moral truth they weren't really asking for. Lydia rushing around, trying on ribbons, Kitty following her like an echo, Mrs. Bennet worrying that someone might get a wrinkle in their dress, and Mr. Bennet just trying to read in peace. In society, the sisters each hold a different place. Jane, with her beauty and grace, is admired everywhere she goes. Elizabeth is respected for her wit and lively conversation. Mary is often overlooked, but she doesn't seem to mind as long as there is a book nearby. Kitty and Lydia are seen as cheerful, pretty, and a little noisy, especially at gatherings where soldiers are involved. People notice them, sometimes with affection, sometimes with amusement. But the truth is, together they bring joyful energy to even the most quiet event. Mrs. Bennet's dreams for her daughters shine through every day. She wants to see Jane happily married to a kind, wealthy gentleman. She imagines Elizabeth charming someone who appreciates her intelligence. She hopes Mary might marry someone who enjoys long lectures and piano practice. She wishes Kitty and Lydia will marry men who can keep up with their energy and maybe calm it down a little. Her heart is full, even if her worries are loud. But through all this pressure, Elizabeth stays true to herself. She doesn't panic about marriage the way her mother does. She knows her worth, even in a world that expects young women to bend themselves into perfect shapes. Her sense of humor keeps her steady. Her bond with Jane keeps her warm, and her sharp mind helps her see through the nonsense that society often creates. Life at Longbourn is not grand or perfect, but it is full of movement, laughter, and small moments that make a home feel alive. This family lives simply, but with heart, and in the quiet countryside of the Regency era, that is a story of its own. As the day settles and evening light fills the house, the Bennet sisters gather again. Talking softly, laughing together, sharing bits of news from town. And in these small everyday moments, their story begins to grow. There are some days in the countryside that feel slow and quiet, like the world is taking a nap. The birds are calm, the wind is soft, and the neighbors have nothing new to gossip about. And then, there are days when one single piece of news spreads faster than a sneeze in a crowded room. This chapter begins with the second kind of day. Early one morning, right when the Bennet family was settling into their usual routine, a rumor floated across the fields and through the village. Netherfield Park had finally been rented. This was big news. Netherfield was a handsome estate, grand but not too grand, the kind of property that made people stand a little straighter when they walked past it. It had been empty for a while, and everyone was curious who the new gentleman might be. The rumor didn't stay a rumor for long. Very soon, Mrs. Bennet had the details. Honestly, I'm not sure how she got them so fast. Maybe she has secret spies hidden in the bushes, but by breakfast time, she knew everything worth knowing. The new tenant was a young man named Mr. Charles Bingley. He was wealthy, very wealthy. He was pleasant, very pleasant. He was single, very single. Mrs. Bennet almost fainted from excitement. She talked so loudly about him that even the teapot probably learned his name. Mr. Bingley, she explained, came from a family with a large fortune earned in trade. His father had built great wealth, and now Charles had all the charm, friendliness, and money a polite English society could ever want. He was cheerful, sociable, and warm-hearted, the type of young man who walks into a room and makes everyone feel lighter just because he smiled. In short, he was the kind of man mothers dreamed about for their daughters. And Mrs. Bennet was a mother who dreamed hard. The moment she heard the news, her mind began spinning faster than a carriage wheel. She imagined Mr. Bingley meeting her daughters, admiring them, falling in love with one of them. Probably Jane, because everyone adored Jane, and marrying into the family. She talked and talked, while Mr. Bennet quietly hid behind his newspaper, pretending he was somewhere far away. Maybe on a beach, maybe on the moon. Still, Mrs. Bennet's hopes were not unreasonable. The whole countryside was buzzing with excitement. People wanted to know what kind of man Mr. Bingley was. Would he be polite? Would he be friendly? Would he throw parties? Most importantly, would he be the sort of gentleman who enjoyed dancing? Because in these parts, if a man danced well, he was halfway forgiven for anything else. A few days later, Mr. Bingley actually arrived at Netherfield, and just as the rumours promised, he was friendly, cheerful, and easygoing. He greeted people with a warm smile, asked polite questions, and made everyone feel comfortable. He wasn't stiff or proud or overly serious. He was simply nice. The kind of nice that feels like sunlight on a mild morning. Even Mr. Bennet, who didn't like many people, admitted that Mr. Bingley seemed quite agreeable. For Mrs. Bennet, this was basically the same as Mr. Bennet shouting, "He's perfect. Let's plan the wedding." But the true moment of interest came at the local assembly ball, a place filled with music, candles, and enough whispers to fill 5 books. This is where Mr. Bingley saw Jane Bennet for the first time. Jane, with her soft voice and gentle smile, moved through the room like kindness wrapped in lace. She didn't seek attention, but somehow attention always found her. When Mr. Bingley was introduced to her, his entire face lit up. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't over the top. It was simply warm, sincere admiration. He asked her to dance. She said yes. And in that one moment, the whole Bennet family leaned forward, in their minds at least, wondering if this was the start of something. When they danced together, it was quiet magic, not the fireworks kind, just a peaceful connection, natural and easy. They talked politely, smiled often, and seemed to understand each other without needing many words. Even Elizabeth, watching from a short distance, noticed how gently they clicked. Jane's calm nature balanced Bingley's friendly cheer like 2 puzzle pieces finding their spot. And the best part, Mr. Bingley didn't hide his feelings. He told people Mrs. Bennet's eldest daughter was the prettiest girl in the room, and he said it openly, with no embarrassment, no hesitation. Just simple admiration. Of course, this comment spread through the ballroom in record time. If gossip were a sport, the local families would win gold medals. By the time the dance ended, half the room was whispering, "Did you hear what he said about Jane Bennet?" And the other half was whispering, "Yes, and I'm telling 3 more people." Mrs. Bennet nearly floated home that night. Actually, she talked the whole ride, so it might be more accurate to say she rattled home. Every word louder and more excited than the last. She spoke so much that even Lydia, who could talk all day, seemed impressed. Meanwhile, Jane stayed quiet and thoughtful. She had enjoyed Mr. Bingley's company, truly, but she didn't rush. That was her nature, to feel deeply, but slowly. she carried her feelings gently. Like a small candle she protected from the wind. Elizabeth, her closest friend and sister, noticed everything. She saw the way Jane's eyes softened when she spoke of Mr. She saw the shy smile she tried to hide, and she felt her own heart warm for her sister. Elizabeth liked Bingley too, not in a romantic way, of course, but she liked how he treated Jane with such kindness and respect. Everyone else felt something too. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Jane Bennet and Mr. Bingley were at the beginning of something sweet and steady. Something comforting. Something that could bring real happiness. The countryside buzzed for days. People passed the story around like a fresh pie. And with every retelling, the picture became clearer. Mr. Bingley's arrival had stirred the calm waters of the village, bringing a new energy, new excitement, new possibilities. Most important of all, it brought a gentle spark between two kind-hearted people, Jane and Bingley, whose connection felt soothing and warm, like a soft blanket on a cool night. And so, with this small beginning, the story of Netherfield's new tenant, and the growing affection he held for Jane Bennet, starts to take shape. The night of the Meryton ball arrived like a small festival wrapped in candlelight. The village had been buzzing for days, and by the time evening came, it felt as if every person within 5 miles was heading toward the bright, warm hall where music filled the air. Lanterns hung like tiny moons, dresses rustled like soft wind, and there was an excited hum rising from every corner. The Bennet family prepared for the night with their usual mix of calm and chaos. Jane looked lovely, as always. Elizabeth tried to look calm while teasing her sisters. Lydia and Kitty were already giggling about the officers they hoped to meet. And Mrs. Bennet had one clear goal: to make sure the night went perfectly for her daughters, especially Jane. Everyone expected Mr. Bingley to be the star of the evening, and he was charming indeed, greeting people with a big smile, dancing almost every dance, and spreading warmth wherever he went. But he didn't come alone. He brought a friend, a very rich friend, a friend named Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. Now, Darcy did not enter the ballroom like Bingley did. He didn't smile widely. He didn't shake hands with everyone. He looked around the room in a calm, serious way, like he was taking quiet notes on everything he saw. He was tall, handsome, and well-dressed, with an air of confidence that made people whisper as soon as he walked in. He was introduced with great respect. After all, he owned a grand estate called Pemberley and had a fortune much larger than Bingley's. But even with all that wealth, he seemed reserved. Not rude, not cold, just careful. Like someone who wasn't sure if he wanted to join the crowd or run back home and read a book. People watched him closely. Some admired him quietly. Others felt uneasy. Darcy didn't seem to notice the attention, or maybe he did and simply didn't react. He stood beside Bingley in calm silence, offering small responses whenever Bingley tried to pull him into conversation. Elizabeth saw this from a distance and couldn't help but be curious. She didn't know him, but his quiet seriousness made him stand out among the cheerful energy of the room. The music started, and couples began to dance. The atmosphere grew warm and lively. Swishing skirts, tapping shoes, laughter, and little whispers passed between friends. Jane and Mr. Bingley danced together more than once, moving like soft sunlight across the floor. And every time they danced, Bingley's face glowed a little brighter. Mrs. Bennet was basically vibrating with joy. Elizabeth enjoyed watching the room, her eyes sharp and playful. She didn't need to be the center of attention. She liked seeing how people acted, how they talked, how they moved. She noticed everything, and sometimes she laughed quietly to herself. Eventually, Bingley approached Darcy and encouraged him to dance. "Come, Darcy, you must dance!" he insisted in his cheerful tone. Darcy glanced around the room and shook his head gently. "You know how I hate it unless I am perfectly acquainted with my partner," he said. Bingley laughed. "There are plenty of nice ladies here. Let me find you someone." But Elizabeth didn't mean to overhear this conversation. But she happened to be close enough that the words floated her way. She didn't react. She simply kept walking, slowly, more slowly, just slowly enough to hear the next part. Bingley smiled and nodded toward Elizabeth. "There is one lady who is very pretty. Elizabeth Bennet." Elizabeth's eyebrows lifted a little. She didn't stop walking, but she listened. Darcy's answer came without hesitation. "She is tolerable, I suppose, but not handsome enough to tempt me." Now that caught Elizabeth's attention. She paused, just a little, then kept moving again. But her mind was definitely awake now. She wasn't heartbroken, far from it. She was amused, and maybe a tiny bit annoyed. Not handsome enough to tempt him, she thought. Well, good thing I wasn't trying. Later, when she told her friends what she overheard, she made it into a joke, laughing lightly about it. Elizabeth didn't like to let insults sit too long. Humor was her shield, her way of staying light even when someone tried to dim her spirit. Still, that small moment stuck with her. Darcy, with all his money and status, had refused to dance with her, someone he didn't know at all. And not just refused, he refused in a way that showed a touch of pride. Or maybe a mountain of pride. This was Elizabeth's first impression of him: polite, maybe, but also stiff. A man who hid behind quiet walls and looked at the world with a very careful, very serious eye. A man who seemed to judge before he tried to understand. Meanwhile, the ball carried on. The music grew faster, the room warmer, the candles lower. People whispered about Darcy's pride and Bingley's friendliness. They compared the two men like they were characters in a story, which, in a way, they were. Elizabeth noticed Darcy again from across the room. He wasn't unkind. He simply seemed uncomfortable, like someone who didn't know where to place himself in all the noise and excitement. While Bingley danced with joy, Darcy stood with a quiet distance that felt almost lonely. This didn't change Elizabeth's feelings about what he said. She still thought his comment was rude. But she also saw something else beneath his pride. A man who wasn't at ease. Someone who struggled with crowds and small talk. Someone who didn't understand how his silence looked to others. Still, first impressions matter, and this first one, not great. As the night went on, Elizabeth moved around the room with her usual grace and humor. She danced, she talked, she laughed. But every now and then, she caught Darcy glancing her way, not in admiration, more like curiosity, as if he wondered why she seemed so alive and comfortable when he did not. The rest of the village, however, had made up its mind about Darcy. They decided he was proud, distant, and not worth the effort. His large fortune made him interesting, but his attitude made him difficult. And so, in this glowing ballroom, a quiet spark formed, not a spark of love, but a spark of misunderstanding. Pride met prejudice, and neither side understood the other. Yet, this moment, the refusal to dance, the overheard words, the wounded pride, the amused reaction, would shape the path ahead, even though none of them knew it yet. The night ended with warm laughter, tired feet, and more gossip than the town could handle. And as the Bennet family rode home, Elizabeth's mind replayed that small moment again and again. The start of something she didn't yet see coming. If you've been listening from the start, you already know that life in the quiet English countryside does not stay quiet for long. Something is always happening, usually involving tea letters, or someone trying very hard to act polite while secretly screaming inside. And in this chapter, we drift into a warm mix of gentle romance, small misunderstandings, and a few charming smiles that might not be as honest as they seem. Let's walk back into the world of the Bennet sisters. The air is calm, the mornings are soft, and change is slowly settling in. And it all begins with Jane Bennet, kind-hearted, sweet Jane, being invited to dine at Netherfield. Now, Jane is the sort of person who looks like she was made out of soft sunshine. Everyone likes her, even people who don't normally like anyone. So when Mr. Bingley invited her to his home, you can imagine the tiny fireworks going off inside Mrs. Bennet's head. Sparks, full celebration, maybe even a marching band. Bennet was thrilled. But she didn't just want Jane to visit. Oh no, she wanted Jane to stay, preferably overnight, preferably with Mr. Bingley standing nearby thinking, "Wow, I must marry this perfect girl at once." So in her usual dramatic style, Mrs. Bennet sent Jane on horseback on a day when rain clouds were sitting in the sky like big grey warnings. And we all know what happens when a lady in a Regency story rides in the rain. She gets sick. And Jane, sweet gentle Jane, does exactly that. By the evening, she is at Netherfield with a fever, tucked into a bed far too fancy for someone who comes from a less wealthy home. The Bingley sisters do their best to look concerned, though secretly they probably enjoy having someone to fuss over. And Mr. Bingley, well, he truly is worried. He looks at Jane with soft eyes, the way someone looks at a warm candle flame in a dark room. Back at Longbourn, word arrives that Jane is ill, and Elizabeth doesn't even think twice. She doesn't care if the roads are muddy or if her shoes will look like she walked through a swamp. She simply pulls on her boots and walks all the way to Netherfield to check on her sister. Picture Elizabeth walking through wide fields, her skirt brushing against wet grass, her hair twisting in the wind. She's determined, loyal, and not afraid to get a little messy. And when she arrives at Netherfield, well, let's just say the room goes a little quiet. Her hem is muddy. Her hair is out of place. Her cheeks are flushed from the long walk. The Bingley sisters stare at her like she has just stepped out of a farmyard. But Mr. Bingley, he just smiles. He thinks it's kind. Elizabeth had come all that way for her sister, and he respects that. Mr. Darcy, on the other hand, tries not to stare, but does anyway, a lot. He even tries to look calm and serious about it, as usual, but he can't quite hide that something about Elizabeth catches his attention more than he expected. Days go by. Jane slowly recovers, thanks to warm soup, rest, and maybe the occasional soft glance from Mr. Bingley. Elizabeth stays beside her most of the time, reading quietly or talking in her calm, thoughtful voice. Meanwhile, the entire Netherfield house gets to experience Elizabeth's sharp humor and steady confidence. But before any romance can start feeling too peaceful, a new figure enters the story. His boots polished, his smile charming, his manners almost too smooth to be real. Mr. Wickham. He shows up in the neighborhood wearing a bright red officer's uniform. The kind that makes people stand straighter, talk sweeter, and immediately wonder what his story is. Wickham is pleasant, friendly. He knows how to make people trust him in about 5 seconds. And of course, he makes quite the impression on Elizabeth. He tells stories in a gentle voice, the kind of voice that makes you lean in a little without realizing it. And soon enough, he begins to talk about Mr. Darcy. But the things Wickham says are not nice. Not nice at all. He claims Darcy treated him unfairly, that Darcy denied him a living that had been meant for him, that Darcy is cold and proud and selfish. Elizabeth listens, surprised. Darcy had already annoyed her at the Meryton ball, so hearing Wickham's sad tale fits neatly into her growing suspicion of him, and Wickham tells the story so gracefully that every word feels believable. He looks hurt but brave, calm but wounded, like a misunderstood hero in a quiet drama. Elizabeth, who loves fairness and honesty, feels her heart soften toward him. Meanwhile, Darcy, poor Darcy, walks around town stiffly, fully aware that Wickham is spreading stories. But he says nothing, because that's who Darcy is, reserved, quiet, unable to explain himself easily, unable to defend his actions without feeling exposed. So he stays distant, which only makes him look more guilty in Elizabeth's eyes. This small misunderstanding settles quietly between them like a thin fog. You don't notice it right away, but it shapes the road ahead. Back at Netherfield, Jane's connection with Mr. Bingley continues to grow in slow, soft steps. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just gentle smiles, quiet talks, calm evenings where he listens to her with full attention, as if nothing in the world could possibly be more important. Elizabeth watches them with warmth. She wants her sister to be happy, and she can see that Bingley is the kind of man who will never make Jane cry. He's calm, caring, easygoing, a golden retriever in human form, if we're being honest. But she also sees the Bingley sisters watching her family with polite but sharp eyes. They don't love the idea of Jane being part of their world. They smile, but a little too tightly. They praise, but a little too faintly. Their opinions float quietly through the air, and Elizabeth senses that trouble might come later. Still, for now, the atmosphere at Netherfield is warm enough, friendly enough, a peaceful pause in the Bennet sisters' lives. Elizabeth leaves with Jane once she is well enough to return home, carrying new thoughts with her, thoughts about Wickham, about Darcy, about the strange ways people show their true selves, and about how easy it is to believe a charming story instead of a complicated truth. And so this chapter closes gently, like a candle being lowered into darkness. A soft romance has begun. A quiet misunderstanding has taken root, and the world of Pride and Prejudice is about to grow even more tangled more tender, and more alive. If you thought things were already a little dramatic in the Bennet household, just wait, because this chapter brings awkward visits, strange proposals, quiet emotions, and a letter that changes everything. It's still peaceful, still soft, still gentle enough for bedtime, but the emotional temperature definitely goes up a few degrees. Let's drift in. We begin with the arrival of Mr. Collins, the Bennets' distant cousin. Now, Mr. Collins is a man who means well. He really does. But he is also well awkward, almost painfully awkward. The sort of man who bows at the wrong time, laughs at jokes no one made, and praises people in a way that makes everyone else stare at the floor. He arrives at Longbourn carrying his pride like a large, wobbly box he doesn't know how to hold. He talks endlessly about his great patron, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, as if she was some powerful queen who allowed him sunlight as a gift. Every conversation he has somehow turns into a speech about her carpets, her opinions, or her gracious suggestions. The Bennets listen politely, though Elizabeth occasionally hides a tiny smile. Mr. Bennet watches him with quiet amusement, probably wishing he had popcorn. But Mr. Collins has a mission, a plan, a goal. He has come to find a wife. And since he wants to make up for the fact that he will one day inherit the Bennets' home, he decides the best thing to do is marry one of the Bennet daughters. This is his idea of being noble, generous, helpful. The problem is that his idea of romance feels more like reading terms and conditions out loud. At first, he picks Jane. But when Mrs. Bennet explains Jane might soon be engaged to Mr. Bingley, Mr. Collins immediately switches targets, as calmly as someone choosing another shirt from a closet. And the new target is Elizabeth. Elizabeth, of course, has absolutely no interest in Mr. Collins. None. But he doesn't notice, or he doesn't want to notice. Instead, he continues to hover around her like a very polite shadow. Then comes the moment, the proposal. It happens one morning when the family is scattered around the house. Mr. Collins manages to corner Elizabeth in the sitting room, clears his throat, says for far too long, and begins. His proposal is long, very long, like this could be a whole lecture long. He talks about his reasons for marriage, Lady Catherine's advice, his future, his garden, his hopes of being useful, the fact that Elizabeth should feel honored. And through all of this, Elizabeth tries to interrupt, softly, politely, trying not to laugh. Finally she says no, clearly, calmly, nicely. But Mr. Collins hears a no, the way some people hear background music. They notice it for a second and then ignore it. He insists she is simply being modest, and that this is normal for young ladies. Elizabeth has to say no again, and again, and again. By the third time, she starts to wonder if perhaps she should write the word "no" on a large board and hold it up like a sign. At last Mr. Collins understands. He is shocked, hurt, confused, and the entire house buzzes with whispers until the drama eases. But in the middle of all this, another thing happens, something quieter, something more thoughtful. Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth's sensible and practical friend, speaks to her gently about the situation. Charlotte is older, wiser in a quiet way, and she sees life from a different angle. Marriage to her is not about romance as much as stability and comfort. So when Mr. Collins goes to visit Charlotte's home later, well, something unexpected happens. he proposes again, this time to Charlotte, and she says yes. Not because she loves him, but because she wants a peaceful life, her own home, a stable future. And in the calm light of the countryside, her choice makes sense for her. Elizabeth is surprised, even a little shaken, but she respects Charlotte's decision. Friendship remains, though Elizabeth wonders what life will look like for her friend now. Now, while all this talk about Mr. Collins takes up the front stage, something else has been brewing quietly in the background, something softer, something Darcy-shaped. Mr. Darcy, with his serious eyes and slow steps, has been growing more and more interested in Elizabeth. He watches her with that steady gaze, almost like he's studying sunlight. He tries to act calm, but inside he is troubled. She confuses him, impresses him, challenges him, and he can't quite let go. So when Elizabeth visits Charlotte and Mr. Collins at their new home near Rosings Park, Lady Catherine's grand estate, Darcy appears again. He and his cousin, Conall Fitzwilliam, come to visit Lady Catherine often, and Darcy finds himself running into Elizabeth more than he expected. At first, he tries small talks, which he is terrible at. He stands around looking tall and thoughtful. He frowns a little too often. He comments on things that don't need comments. And yet, Elizabeth begins to see something different in him. Not enough to change her mind, but enough to make her curious. And then comes the moment that shifts everything. Darcy's first proposal. It happens one calm evening when Elizabeth is alone in the parsonage drawing room. Darcy walks in. He paces a bit. His breathing is uneven. And finally, he blurts it out. His feelings, his admiration, his struggle. But Darcy, poor man, mixes romance with a long list of reasons why the marriage would be difficult. Social class, family differences, his worries, his doubts. He loves her, but he can't help sounding like he's complaining while proposing. Elizabeth is stunned, then angry, then shocked again. She refuses him firmly, with fire in her eyes but calm in her voice. She tells him she thinks he is the last man she could ever marry. She brings up Wickham. She brings up his interference with Jane and Bingley. She holds nothing back. Darcy leaves, hurt but silent. The next day he returns, but only to hand her a letter that changes the entire story. In this letter, Darcy explains everything, quietly, honestly, without pride this time. He tells the truth about Wickham, the lies, the money, the real story that Wickham never shared. He explains his reasons for guiding Bingley away from Jane, thinking she wasn't truly in love, wanting to protect his friend. Elizabeth reads it slowly, each line peeling away her misunderstandings. Her anger softens. Her prejudices begin to shake. She feels a mix of guilt, surprise, and clarity. And in this soft moment of truth, she sees Darcy not as a proud statue, but as a man, flawed, honest, trying in his own quiet way. The chapter closes on this calm revelation. No shouting, no storms. Just a shift inside Elizabeth's heart that no one else can see. There are some moments in life that quietly change everything. They don't arrive with fireworks or loud music. They slip in softly, like sunlight through a window. This chapter is full of those moments, of quiet understanding, soft surprises, and a bit of trouble that sneaks in when no one is watching. Let's step gently into it. We begin with Elizabeth, who is traveling with her aunt and uncle, the gardeners. Their trip brings them close to Pemberley, the great estate owned by Mr. Darcy. And at first, Elizabeth is sure she doesn't want to visit. After all, she turned Darcy down in a dramatic moment not too long ago. But the Gardiners are curious about the place, and Elizabeth is told Darcy is away. So she agrees. When they reach Pemberley, the change begins. The estate is calm, wide, peaceful. There are rolling green hills, tall trees, and a house that stands with quiet pride, but not the kind of pride Darcy once showed. The house feels warm, balanced, like a deep breath you didn't know you needed. Elizabeth walks through the rooms and grounds, and everywhere she looks, she sees signs of Darcy's true nature. The servants speak highly of him, not out of fear, but out of respect. The housekeeper smiles when she speaks of him. There's no talk of arrogance, no talk of pride, just stories of a good man who cares for his people. And this is where Elizabeth's heart starts to tilt, just a little, not flip, not leap, just tilt. She senses the truth in the quiet corners of Pemberley. She sees who Darcy is when he is not trying to impress or hide, and slowly her old thoughts begin to melt away. Then comes a surprise, a big one. Darcy is not away. He returns earlier than expected. And Elizabeth, who was peacefully admiring a stream moments before, suddenly finds herself face to face with the man she once refused. But Darcy behaves in a way she does not expect. He's gentle, calm, almost shy. There's no arrogance, no sharp edges. It's like meeting a softer, kinder version of him, a version shaped by reflection and maybe by heartbreak. He greets her with warmth. He greets her relatives with respect. He even walks with them around his grounds, choosing his words carefully, seeming almost hopeful. Elizabeth begins to see everything differently. Darcy is no longer the stiff, proud stranger she met at the Meryton ball. He's a man who listened to her criticism, changed because of it, and still treats her with kindness. This is the real turning point. The quiet moment when admiration starts to slip into her heart, soft and slow. But just as things begin to settle into this gentle rhythm, trouble knocks on the peaceful door. A letter arrives from home, and everything changes. The letter brings news that Lydia, the youngest Bennet sister, has run away with Mr. Wickham, and not in the elegant, respectable way people do when planning to marry. No, Lydia has disappeared with Wickham, with no wedding in sight. It is a scandal, a real one, the kind of scandal that could destroy the whole Bennet family's reputation. Elizabeth's hands shake as she reads. Her breath tightens. Her mind spins. She feels fear, shame, worry, and something else, deep regret. Regret that she trusted Wickham's words. Regret that she believed his stories about Darcy. Regret that she judged Darcy so quickly. Darcy sees her distress. He asks gently what's wrong, and Elizabeth tells him everything. Lydia's disappearance, Wickham's involvement, the danger her family faces. Darcy listens in silence, his face steady but full of emotion. Then he leaves. Elizabeth thinks her family's shame has pushed him away. She believes he will distance himself forever, and her heart, already shifting toward him, cracks a little at the thought. But Darcy has not walked away. He has walked toward the problem, secretly, quietly, without telling anyone. While Elizabeth returns home to the chaos of worried parents and tearful sisters, Darcy begins moving through London, searching for Wickham and Lydia. Every step he takes is unseen. Every conversation is hidden behind closed doors. Darcy finds Wickham living in a shabby part of the city, broken, careless. He finds Lydia, cheerful as ever, not fully aware of the trouble she's caused. And instead of judging, Darcy acts. He pays Wickham's debts. He convinces him to marry Lydia. He arranges everything, pushing his own pride aside and thinking only of Elizabeth, of her family, her peace, her future. He does this in silence. He asks for nothing. He hides his name from the story. And slowly the scandal settles. Lydia becomes Lydia Wickham, still wild, still loud, but respectably married. The family breathes a little easier, though no one knows what Darcy has done. No one except Lydia, who accidentally lets it slip later. Because of course she does. When Elizabeth hears the truth, her heart shifts again. More deeply this time. Darcy didn't act to impress her. He didn't act to win her. He acted because he cared, because he wanted to protect her family from pain. She sees now what she could not see before: his honor, his loyalty, his love, steady and quiet, like a lamp glowing in the dark. And in this calm revelation, something in Elizabeth softens completely. She thinks of Pemberley, of Darcy's voice, of his changed behavior, of his letter, of his hidden kindness. She realizes she has misjudged him from the beginning, and she realizes she no longer dislikes him, not even a little. The shift is gentle, like a tide turning. The chapter ends not with noise, but with a breath, a soft movement of the heart. Elizabeth now sees Darcy clearly, and for the first time, she lets herself feel what has been growing quietly all along. Some stories do not end with loud celebrations or sudden bursts of excitement. Some stories, like this one, come to a close the way a candle burns down, softly, slowly, with a warm and steady glow. And this final chapter brings us exactly that kind of ending: gentle, calm, full of quiet joy. Let's step into it. We begin with something long hoped for. Something sweet and peaceful. Jane and Mr. Bingley finally get engaged. It feels almost like the world has been waiting for them to catch up. Everyone could see it. Except maybe Jane, who is too modest, and Mr. Bingley, who is too kind to assume anything. But once Bingley returns to Netherfield, with Darcy's encouragement, their connection settles into place like a soft breath. Their engagement is warm. No drama, no storms. Just two gentle hearts finding each other without hesitation. Jane glows in her quiet way, like a candle on a winter night. Bingley smiles so much that even Mrs. Bennet can't yell over her own joy. She practically floats around the house, already planning the wedding, the future grandchildren, and maybe even new furniture. Elizabeth watches all of this with happiness. Jane's joy is her joy, and yet there is something else growing quietly inside her, something she doesn't quite want to name yet. Feelings. Deep feelings. For Mr. Darcy. The shift inside her isn't fast. It's slow, like leaves turning in autumn. But the more she thinks of him, the letter, his kindness, the way he saved her family without wanting any credit, the more her heart settles into a new understanding. Darcy is no longer just the proud man she once disliked. He is someone steady, someone good, someone who changed himself, not for show, but because he wanted to become better. And Elizabeth begins to admire him deeply, fully, quietly. But just as her heart starts to settle, someone else enters the stage, someone who does not understand calm or quiet. Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Lady Catherine arrives like a cold wind blowing into a warm room. She doesn't send a letter, or a warning, or even a polite knock. She simply appears at Longbourn, tall and grand, with an expression that could scare a mountain lion. She demands to speak to Elizabeth alone. The Bennet family stares, unsure whether to be honoured or afraid. Once they are alone in the garden, Lady Catherine begins. And oh, does she begin! With her usual dramatic style, she tells Elizabeth that she has heard a rumour, an awful rumour, that Elizabeth might plan to marry Mr. Darcy, and she absolutely forbids it. According to her, Darcy must marry her sickly daughter. That was the plan since they were babies, even though Darcy probably never agreed. She tries everything. She warns, she insults, she lectures. She waves her cane a little too fast. Elizabeth listens calmly. She is polite because she was raised well, but she is also firm because she was born with a strong sense of who she is. She refuses to make any promise. She refuses to be bullied. She refuses to let Lady Catherine's pride decide her life. Lady Catherine leaves in outrage, and Elizabeth, though shaken, stands tall. She knows she did the right thing, even if she doesn't know what will happen next. But here's the quiet twist. Lady Catherine runs straight to Darcy, and without meaning to, without even realizing it, she helps bring the story to its final piece. Because her dramatic outburst tells Darcy that Elizabeth cares enough to stand her ground, that she didn't reject the idea of him, that she didn't push him away, and that tiny bit of hope is all Darcy needs. Soon after, Darcy returns to Longbourn, not with arrogance, not with expectation, but with a gentle, honest heart. He walks with Elizabeth, and the air is calm around them. The world feels still. He speaks softly, with a little hesitation, as if every word matters. And then he says it, his second proposal, not rushed, not stiff, not tangled in pride, just warm and simple. He tells her he still loves her. He tells her he has changed. He tells her he hopes she might care for him now, but he will accept it if she does not. It is a proposal full of respect, full of honesty, full of quiet love. And this time, Elizabeth's answer is different. She says yes, not in a loud or excited way. No need for that. She says it gently, because gentle words often carry the deepest truths. She tells him how her feelings have changed, how she understands him now, how she sees his goodness, how she admires him with her whole heart. Darcy listens, and something softens inside him, something he had kept hidden for too long. For the first time, he lets himself smile without holding back. And with that, the two journeys, one of pride, one of prejudice, finally meet in the middle. The families are told. Mrs. Bennet screams with joy. Mr. Bennet is surprised, then deeply touched. Jane and Bingley are thrilled. Even Lydia writes a casual, chaotic letter asking for gifts. Everything settles into a peaceful rhythm. And so we end this story the same way it unfolded, quietly, gently, with warmth. We reflect on what we've seen. Pride, when softened by love, becomes humility. Prejudice, when touched by truth, becomes understanding. Two people grew, changed, learned, and opened their hearts, not with noise, but with calm determination. Elizabeth and Darcy walk into their future side by side. Jane and Bingley laugh in the sunlight. The Bennet household quiets down at last, and the world of Pride and Prejudice closes like a soft curtain. So as you settle into your own calm night, let this gentle ending wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let the quiet of these final moments guide your thoughts toward rest. And let the love and lessons of this story drift with you into sleep. Good night.